Hello, viewers. Today is July 19th, 2024. I'm here to discuss about the battleground state of Nevada. I'm going to do this in two different episodes. First, I want to discuss about the presidential election in Nevada in 1992, and then I'm going to pivot to the actual general election in 1992 across all the states. And then tomorrow I will discuss about the state of Nevada in further detail. So let's go right into the 1992 presidential election in Nevada. This was an election where we had three candidates. You had Bill Clinton from the Democratic Party, and then George Herbert Walker Bush from the Republican Party. By the way, he was a sitting president at that time. He was running for the re-election in 1992. And then we had Ross Perot from the Reform Party, which is the third party at that election. And Ross Perot ran on just two specific issues during that campaign. One of them was on debt and deficit. So, in fact, he was the first person who raised the issue of debt and deficit and brought it to the national media spotlight. And you should be given credit for that. The second issue that he ran on was basically a trade protectionist uh, campaign and issue, in the sense that he was talking about jobs for USA, in USA, for USA people, kind of a rhetoric. And he was anti-NAFTA, which was a North American Free Trade Agreement. And NAFTA was not implemented, by the way, during George Herbert Walker Bush's term. Bill Clinton eventually signed that bill after he got elected in that election. So that said, in that election in Nevada, we had Nevada at that time had 4 electoral college votes. Currently, it has got 6 because of the population growth and whatnot. But Bill Clinton won that 4 electoral college votes. He won around 37.3% of the votes, and George Herbert Walker Bush got around 34.6% votes. But Ross Perot, the Reform Party candidate, won a whopping 26.19% of the votes. So here is a state where the third party did very well in that 1992 election, and that too Ross Perot did very well in that state in that election. So now let's go back to that particular election across the country. So in that general election, these three candidates ran on all the states, and at the end of the election cycle, Bill Clinton won around 43% of the votes, and George Herbert Walker Bush got 37.6% of the votes, and Ross Perot got around 18.9% of the votes. But from an electoral college perspective, Bill Clinton got a whopping 370 electoral college votes, and George Herbert Walker Bush got only 168 electoral college votes. And Ross Perot, with that 18.9% of the votes, he got 0 electoral college votes. So, but the election was pretty close. I will tell you the reason why it is very close. In 2 states, the margin was less than 1%. And the first state was Georgia, which was won by Bill Clinton by 0.39% of the votes. And the second was North Carolina, that was won by around 0.79% of the votes by George Herbert Walker Bush. Then there is the next tier where the margin was between 1% and 5% of the votes. We had 15 such states and 1 congressional district in Maine that was decided within that margin, right? So out of that 15 states and 1 congressional district in Maine, 5 states were won by the Republican candidate, George Herbert Walker Bush. So those 5 states were Florida, Arizona, Texas, Virginia, and South Dakota. And then the Democrats won the remaining 10 states and the 2nd congressional district in Maine. So the 10 states were New Hampshire, New Jersey, Nevada, Montana, Ohio, Colorado, Wisconsin, Kentucky, Louisiana, and Tennessee. So these 10 states and the 2nd congressional district in Maine was won within the margin of 1 to 5 percentage points. And in the 2nd congressional district in Maine, actually Bill Clinton beat Ross Perot. And in fact, in the entire statewide tally, Ross Perot got into the second place by a slim margin by beating George Herbert Walker Bush by around 316 votes. So in the state of Maine, Bill Clinton won the state, and the runner-up was actually Ross Perot, and George Herbert Walker Bush was relegated to the third place. And this was quite an embarrassment for that sitting president, because not only he was a sitting president who was relegated to the third place, but he also had a summer home in Maine. So this was like a second home for him, right? So he lost that state, and he also was relegated to the third place. In fact, even in Montana, Ross Perot got into the second place as well. So the whole election in 1992 was close, but Bill Clinton had a huge margin on the electoral college from the electoral college perspective. So the lot of the pundits, political analysts, and data analysts were looking at the data to see exactly what happened during that election, whom did Ross Perot help, and whom did he hurt. So before going into that, during that campaign, right, Republicans were thinking that Ross Perot is eating into their votes. They were probably right if you look at the data after the election. And so they ran a very harsh negative campaign against Ross Perot. So Ross Perot was really fed up. In fact, he said they are attacking him in a negative way, and he said it was not fair and whatnot. So George Herbert Walker Bush had a famous retort for that. We all know that Ross Perot was a businessman and he was a billionaire at that time. So George Herbert Walker Bush said that if we can't stand a heat, buy an AC company. That was what he said when Ross Perot was complaining. So that was a funny retort from the sitting president then to basically blunt Ross Perot's message, saying that he has been targeted unfairly and in a negative way by the Bush campaign. And also another fact during that campaign was somewhere during the DNC Democratic National Convention, or just a week or two afterwards, Ross Perot actually dropped out. And the reason he gave was, he said that the Democratic Party has become revitalized and re-energized. So he said that there was no need for him to contest anymore. So he basically suspended his campaign. But a month or two afterwards, he jumped back into the fray. So that was the history during that campaign. And it was a very hotly contested campaign, because at some point, all of the three candidates were polling around 30% each. And so people thought that this is going to be it's quite possible that the third party or a Reform Party candidate, Ross Perot, can win the presidency, right? It didn't happen that way, but still it was a very close election. So there is another interesting episode during that campaign was during the election day. George Herbert Walker Bush was actually in Houston. He had a house in Houston. He was a Texas resident. And so mid-afternoon on the election day, or mid to late afternoon on election day, he went to the shopping center, to a supermarket, and he was seen buying some fishing accessories. And the media started speculating that he has already started preparing for his retirement. That was another interesting thing that happened during that whole election. So now I'll come back to the political and data analyst poring over the data after the election to see exactly what happened and whom did Ross Perot hurt or help. So based on all the data that people have analyzed, it looked as though that Ross Perot helped Bill Clinton to win the presidency. Most of the Ross Perot voters were actually Republican voters because they were fiscally conservative. So they voted for Ross Perot for his fiscal conservatism. If Ross Perot was not in the race, most of them would have voted for George Herbert Walker Bush. So the reason I'm saying all this is in context to this 2024 election. In 2024, even though we have two major party candidates, we also have RFK Jr. running, and he is currently polling between 6 to 8 percentage points nationally, I don't have the exact numbers in each and every state because I'm not even sure that he has qualified himself to be on the ballot on every state. So, but nationally, he's polling somewhere between 4 to 8 percentage points. So this is not a good sign. Some people say for both the parties, but from my perspective, I think it is not a good sign for the Democrats because even if he splits the vote equally between Republicans and Democrats, Democrats are at a disadvantage because Democrats are actually trailing now. The Republicans are slightly ahead, only slightly, but still they are ahead. So every percentage point that Democrats lose to RFK Jr. will make it difficult for them to win the presidency. So that is the context by which I would like to discuss this 1992 election, and that's why I discussed this with you guys. And tomorrow we can discuss about the current state of affairs in Nevada and see the historical trend, how the historical trend was in terms of voting percentages and votes in each county and whatnot. So stay tuned and take care.